Hello, beauties, and welcome back to another fabulous confabulation with me, Jay Mills. Now today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a beauty who has a heart for theater. This beauty is the creative and programming director at Feinstein / 54 Below, where she has overseen over 3,000 shows. She is also an author and a theater historian and has worked on Broadway shows such as the 2011 revival of Godspell. I would like to welcome Jennifer Tepper.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
I'm delighted
you.
to chat.
Yes, me too. I'm so excited. So how did you become the creative and programming director at 54 Below?
Great. Should we chat face to face or should I look in the camera?
You can do whatever
So glam. Both options. I became the creative and programming director at Feinstein's 54 Below from just a lifetime of really loving theater, loving cabaret, loving musical theater artists. I went to NYU, and while I was at NYU, yeah, it was my dream school. I didn't apply anywhere else. I was like,
wow.
NYU or bust. And I'm originally from Florida, but had my heart set on NYU. And while I was at NYU, I really honed in on those musical theater producing and history skills. I knew that I wanted to do something that had to do with both making new shows happen and treasuring shows of the past. So over the years, I got a lot of experience producing concerts and putting them together, whether it was concerts celebrating underappreciated musicals, concerts with new musical theater writers, old stuff, new stuff, and everything in between. And so when Feinstein's 54 Below opened, I actually produced a show here with my frequent collaborator, Joe Iconis, during the first year that it was open. And then when they were looking for a programming director to come on board about a year in, I ended up getting the gig because we had that relationship from my having produced something here. So I kind of brought all of my history knowledge and producing knowledge to the venue.
Nice. So, what are your responsibilities here at 54?
We do 18 shows a week usually, which is a lot. At any given time, we have hundreds of shows coming up. And my job is essentially to program everything on our calendar. So it's everything from musicals and concert to new writers to the cast of current Broadway shows to solo shows by huge legends and by artists who are really exciting who are just coming up. The songs of Irving Berlin, the songs of Britney Spears, everything in between. So it's really my job to either come up with the ideas for the shows or to collaborate with artists who have the ideas for the shows, whether that's, actors or a producer who might put it together or a director or an agent or anyone else. And I kind of put all the pieces together with the artist. So how many performances can we do? What fee or budget can we pay them? What ticket price is it? What's the show going to be like? How is the show going to interact with our marketing staff, our tech staff, everyone that, goes into putting on a show here. I'm kind of like the director of putting all those pieces together. Okay. And then our fantastic staff works with each artist to make each show happen here. So at any given time, I'm booking 18 shows for the future each week, and I'm making the 18 shows that are that week happen, and, talking to a lot of artists who have performances coming up about their shows. So it's really fun. It's never a dull moment. Lots of Broadway people in here all the time.
Yeah, and it also sounds really hectic, too.
It's pretty hectic. Yeah, whenever people ask about, what a typical day is, I'm like, it's never the same, but there is no day where I don't answer 200 emails. Right. That's the only consistent thing.
So, what would you say is your favorite show? 18 shows a week, that's a lot.
That's a great question. I have so many favorite shows I've gotten to do here. It's really special to me when I can bring back a show from the past, like a musical that was not fully appreciated the first time around. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of that. It's also really special to me when I can work with people I've come up with in the industry who are my peers to, do their first big solo show or a big thing with them. And then I also get to work with these legends who I grew up obsessed with on cast recording. So it's hard to pick a favorite because honestly, it's all really special to me. And
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's been years and I'm still I can't pick a favorite. They're all my favorite.
So what skills are necessary for a person in your position?
Also a great question. One of the main skills I think is just being able to juggle a lot of things at the same time. It's being able to get off the phone with an agent and immediately email another artist and then answer a question about another show and then, have 3 ideas in your head after that for the next thing you're going to do. It's a lot of doing a lot of things at the same time. It's a lot of just that core knowledge of theater and keeping up with theater. People ask me, how are there this many ideas for shows? And it's the theater community, both people who are on Broadway, have been on Broadway, want to be on Broadway. There's so many wonderful corners of our business. And just like having that knowledge and that passion for all of them and being able to utilize all of that in how we create our calendar and what we do here. Those are definitely skills that are very important.
Okay, so time management, like especially.
Time management.
A really good one. So like no time to waste.
No time to waste.
No breaks.
Very true.
What kind of training did you go through to be where you are now in your career?
You know, what's really interesting is that there's a lot of jobs in theater that there's not really a perfect major in school that you can do that'll technically prepare you. And when I was growing up, I knew that I wanted to like work in the theater, and I didn't necessarily want to be a performer, but I didn't really want to like write plays either. I knew that was the thing you could do from a pretty young age, and I loved writing, but I didn't want to write plays. And then there's not, you know, a major if you're like, maybe I want to be a producer, maybe I want to be an agent, maybe I want to be a casting director. You know, there's so many things you can do in theater that are amazing that there's no major for or no like exact path. And I was really obsessed growing up with Ted Chapin, who wrote this book called Everything Was Possible, The Birth of the Musical Follies. And he is like this incredible theater professional that's done all these different things in his career. And he, you know, this book and following his career and following the careers of people like Ira Weitzman just made me realize that there were jobs you could do where you worked with musical theater, but you weren't, you know, you weren't a costume designer, you weren't an actor. So, you know, because of that, I was like, oh, I have to create my own training. I have to teach myself about the things that I want to work in. So through reading books, through listening to cast albums, through studying liner notes, through seeing shows and taking notes on like all the changes that the show would make during previews, through just kind of learn and, you know, taking classes at NYU certainly about all kinds of different topics, I kind of started to teach myself the training that I needed. And this job that I have now didn't exist when I was in school and not even for a while after I was out of school. So I was prepared for it when it came along, but I had no way of knowing it was a thing. I just kind of stacked myself with all of those tools that I thought I would like to use.
Great. And I was gonna ask, like, what made you do behind the scene work instead of an actor? Like, did you ever act in shows?
Yeah, you know, I loved performing when I was growing up and when I was in high school. I thought it was a blast. I loved being part of a cast and being part of a show and, you know, that teamwork and that energy. Like, it's so fun.
It is.
But I think part of it was, like, having learned so much about, you know, musical theater, about what's going on Broadway. I was like, there's, like, no way that that's, you know, I knew I wasn't going to be a performer. And I also was like, I'm not going to be ever, like, the best singer or the best actor, but, like, I think I might be the person that loves this the most, so I should do something where, like, I can cultivate that love. And, like, I was obsessed growing up. You know, I went to theater camp and performed there, but the thing that, like, made me so happy at theater camp more than anything else was, like, teaching all of my friends who I went to camp with about new musicals that came out and being like, oh, man, like, we have to go, like, listen to the last 5 years, or, like, we have to go to this regional production of Parade or whatever. I just named 2 Jason Robert Brown shows because I love Jason Robert Brown. But I was really obsessed with, like, teaching other people about musical theater, spreading that love, learning about new shows myself. So, you know, I just started to cultivate those things. And, you know, I still, like, a lot of stuff that I do, I'll, like, host something or I'll speak publicly, and that performance element is there. But I just think that there's so many other paths that, you know, when you're growing up, you don't know that, like, you can be the lighting designer because you can't lighting design your middle school play, but there's so many other opportunities out there that are open to you once you know, are there in the professional world.
Yeah, so, like, this was your calling.
It really was, I think.
Yeah, like what you said, like, you don't have the opportunity in middle school to, like, maybe light design or something. At my high school, which I go to a performing arts high school, so, like, they give us that opportunity to tech shows. So, like, I tech shows, like, for the underclassmen shows and stuff like that. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity because I get to see both sides.
Have you gotten to, like, lighting design, or what have you done in the
design?
shows?
No, I did house, I did set, costume. That's it. I didn't really do, like, the lights.
Is house, like, house management?
Like, doing, like, the playbills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the set was one of the most challenging ones, but that's my favorite.
I also think that's so great, because even if you, like, do something else, like, you'll always have that experience, and then, you know, if you're, like, a performer who set designed in school, then you're like, oh, I understand what this set designer is going through. I can collaborate with them better. So that's great. You go to a great school.
Yeah, it helps me appreciate, like, the crew more, because I feel like sometimes they're underappreciated.
Totally.
But they do put a lot of work into performances.
Oh my God, yeah.
So being in that position really showed me, like, wow, like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure.
So can you tell me about a time where you thought outside the box on a strategic marketing initiative?
That is a great question. So when I first came on board at the venue at Feinstein's 54 Below, they were doing a lot of star runs. So you would have like Patti LuPone for a week, and maybe you would also have, like some late night fun stuff. But when I came on board, it became apparent very quickly that the way to keep the venue running successfully would be to have this large volume of shows, to have the 7, 9:30, and 11:30 every night, and to have these, like more established people at 7, and at 9:30 have more emerging artists, and at 11:30 have people really just starting out. So balancing all of that became like the puzzle pieces that are key to my job. And as far as strategic marketing, what's interesting is like all of the reunion concerts and the underappreciated musicals in concert and the person you've never heard of coming back to present their songs kind of thing, that takes strategic marketing, because you really have to find the people who love those things. And like last year, I put together this show called Rachel Lily Rosenblum and Don't You Ever Forget It, which is a musical that closed on Broadway in the 70s during previews, and which very few people ever got to see. And it was really amazing. And it was written by Paul Jabara and Tom Ian, who are these like incredible writers who had so many other successes. And this was something that was like an amazing, crazy musical, unlike anything you've ever seen. Like, watch some videos on YouTube, you'll be like, what's happening? It was awesome and original, and, again, like, people have kind of known what it was because it was like a legendary flop, but people didn't really know it. So, I spent months promoting it so that people who are interested in like rediscovering these, underappreciated musicals would know about it. And that was just like everything from, making videos in rehearsal to taking quotes from the script and like putting them out there on social media. And you just kind of figure out like, okay, this specific show, the wonderful thing about our venue is we have 150 seats. So we're not filling an 1,000-seat Broadway theater 8 times a week. I just have to find those 150 people who this show would be special to. What kind of information can I give them that will make them remember that this is something they want to see? And ultimately, we had 2 like amazing, well-sold shows. And I was able to find a lot of people who might not have necessarily heard about it if we were doing another show, but they heard about this because like we were able to target them by coming up with fun stuff from the musical.
Nice. So now how do you choose or find some of your projects?
I am just like very much keeping up in the Broadway community all the time. Like if there are headphones in my ears, I'm listening to a new writer or a new musical or an old musical that might want to come back. It's genuinely what I'm interested in, so that helps. But just like I'll go to the theater and I'll see a show and I'll be like, oh my God, that ensemble member, like they, had 2 lines, but they seemed really awesome. Let me look them up. Let me see like who they are and what they're about. Like, could they do a show? And then also, we do so many group shows here that sometimes, there'll be a group performance and I'll be like, oh, that performer, that person should do their own show. So there's a lot of ways that I kind of like keep up on it and discover people. There's also, there's like an ongoing list at any time of like literal hundreds of shows I want to do here that we haven't done yet, just because, when we do a musical in concert, we have to get permission. So like if a show is coming to Broadway, we're not going to get permission to do it at the venue, or if someone wants to bring it to Broadway. So there's all these reasons why, a show that you want to happen here hasn't happened yet. And it could be, that performer's been working in TV for the last couple of years, and their schedule doesn't permit it, or that musical, had someone optioned it so they couldn't, do a concert in New York because the option existed. So at any given time, I kind of will be like, oh, this kind of show, add it to my wish list, and then it might happen 3 years from now. We're doing a show that's coming up that was on my wish list for a long time, which is all people that are making their Broadway debuts this season.
Ooh.
Yeah, super excited about that.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, and like whenever there's an idea like that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to find someone great to put it together for us. And so this amazing producer, Jen Sandler, is doing that. But I remember last year I was like trying to find someone, and no one who I felt like could put that together was free during that month. And, there's a lot of reasons why sometimes it takes things a while to happen. And you just kind of keep that wish list and never give up the hope on them.
Right, and eventually it will happen. What are some shows that you have worked on?
Like shows, like not 54 Below shows. Yeah. So my first like real professional job in theater was I worked on the Broadway musical Title of Show right after I graduated from NYU. When I was at NYU, I was an intern for the writers, Hunter Bell and Jeff Bowen of that musical. And then when I graduated, it was at the time that the show was moving to Broadway. And so the director, Michael Buress, hired me as his assistant. So right after I graduated school, I had the amazing, fortunate timing of working on a Broadway show, running around backstage solving problems and taking notes and doing all kinds of things. And it really is what actually inspired me to write my book series, because spending so much time at like the Lyceum Theater, which is the oldest continually operating theater on Broadway. It's been a Broadway house since 1903. It's incredible. And I was just like, yeah, like I had always been obsessed with like the theaters themselves, but I was like, you know, I have to find out what else has been at the Lyceum, and this dressing room I'm sitting in right now, like who's had this dressing room, and it was so exciting. So that show impacted my life in all kinds of ways. Like the creators, working on it with them, just like completely opened me up to like this mindset of what Broadway could be and what theater could be at its best when you're like creating stuff you really care about. That was a great experience. And I've worked on a number of shows since. You mentioned the Broadway revival of Godspell, which I worked for 3 years for the Broadway producer Ken Davenport, who is amazing and does all kinds of stuff. And I was his director of marketing and communications, and we worked on this Broadway revival of Godspell that was crowdfunded. So we had this unique producing model. We had this incredible cast. You know, it was a show several years in the making. So I got to be part of, you know, everything that went into making it happen, from casting to marketing meetings to, you know, raising money to creative decisions, all of it, and just kind of be part of the team and be around for that, which was a very educational experience. And so many of the people that I worked on that with, I still collaborate on other things with to this day.
Nice. And you mentioned your book series.
Yeah.
Yes, it's 3 volumes, right? Now, can you explain what it's about a little bit?
The Untold Stories of Broadway is essentially a book series that celebrates the Broadway theaters themselves, but through people's personal stories and memories who've worked in them. So I've interviewed about 300 theater professionals now.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's, you know, everyone from actors to directors to producers to stagehands, musicians, designers, door men and women, all kinds of people that work in the theater. And basically each book takes 8 Broadway theaters, 7 that are currently in use, and then 1 that's demolished or lost or no longer. And it takes you through them chronologically so that, you know, if we're in the St. James Theater chapter, you're hearing from someone who did Oklahoma there, and then you're hearing from someone who did Something Rotten there, and everyone in between. And while you're getting these stories, you're also getting like discoveries I've made about the theater and interesting things that you might not know about it. And this show that, you know, ran for not very long, but had, you know, something really important happen. So I'm able to kind of like write my own stories and also integrate all of these interviews into one tale that really gives you a sense of like the theater's physical history and how we're all tied together by it.
Nice. And that's really, really interesting. So like, what inspired you to do that? Like, is it something that you maybe was thinking of?
Yeah, I definitely was always obsessed with, like, because I was in Florida and I was learning about theater from afar,
right.
I would learn about the theaters themselves because I wanted to have some kind of sense of, like, what I was learning about. So, you know, I knew that Pippin played the Imperial Theater and that Dreamgirls played the Imperial Theater, and I was like, oh, what's the Imperial Theater? Okay, Les Mis is playing there now. Like, it's on 45th Street, and I kind of learned about New York by learning about these shows and the theaters they played. And so when I got to New York, I was very much obsessed with being like, okay, I'm seeing Dirty Rotten Scoundrels here at the Imperial, and these are the things that have played there. And then, you know, again, during Title of Show, it was just like, okay, like I'm working backstage at a Broadway theater for the first time. And the amazing thing was that my book series came about because I do this concert series called If It Only Even Runs a Minute, which celebrates underappreciated musicals. You can find all of our videos on YouTube, and it's all original cast members come and they sing songs and they tell stories about shows. They recreate original performances, and writers come and talk about shows, and we have new people interpreting this like unheard and, you know, underappreciated material that really deserves a second look. And then in between I give, you know, anecdotes and fun facts about all these shows. And so my now book publishers came to one of those concerts and asked me if I would want to pitch them a book. And I was like, oh yeah, I've had this idea for a little while about the Broadway theaters themselves. Like, let me flesh this out. And we thought it would be one book, and it's of course going to be 6 because we have 3 so far, 3 to come. And it's been like such an adventure. I've gotten to talk to so many like cool people.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, talking to all those people, you're just learning new things as you go, as you're talking to all these performers and backstage people. So you also give a portion of the proceeds to a charity. What are some charities that you have helped?
Yeah, it was really important to me with Untold Stories to partner with a charity for each book. And that was so, each of the charities is related to the Broadway community. And it was really important to do that so that, all of these people are telling me their stories, and I also wanted that to like go back into the community in some way. So we've had a lot of great partnerships. We just finished partnering with the Broadway Green Alliance on one of the books. Not really finished because like the proceeds continue to go there. But yeah, like so I actually during that process got to learn a lot more about what they do and all the different ways that like we can be more green in what we do on shows, whether you're on Broadway or in your community. And if you check out like just go on the Broadway Green Alliance website, there's so much great stuff you can do that makes a big difference if you just do a couple little things. So that was really awesome. And actually, I think we're going to announce the partner for the next book soon. So that's been like a great part of it.
Okay, cool. That's so nice that you write this book and you also give back to the Broadway world. It's like what I'm doing with my blog, giving back to all girls, and you're focusing on the Broadway world specifically.
Totally.
Really
I'm
nice.
obsessed with your blog. I was just like reading and like checking out everything before you got here.
Thank you so much.
It's so great. If you're watching this, you should go and just like look at everything on the site.
Yes, and if you're watching this, you should look more into Jennifer because she's amazing. You're absolutely amazing.
You are too. We're having like a love fest in the office.
Yes.
Yeah. New Jersey thespians.
Right. So going back to you being a creative and programming director, what are some challenges that you face?
One of the main challenges is, we have these 18 shows a week, as I've said a few times. And of course, many people want to play 54 Below, which is very wonderful. And there's so many people we want to play 54 Below. But it's sometimes hard because you're like, literally every slot has to be filled. So like right now I'm like, oh, someone booked like a TV show and they had to cancel on, May 14th at 7. So I have to find someone specifically who can play May 14th at 7. And, right now it's about like a month and a half away. So I have to find them quickly, put them on sale, make sure that's a successful show. And so it's just like the specific scheduling and logistics of all of it. Whereas 2 months ago, I could have definitely found someone to play that slot, but now it's like really soon. So it's kind of just a matter of being on your toes and staying on top of all of these things and having ideas in mind so that, I'm not spending too much time coming up with emergency plans, but I do have people in mind that I'm like, oh, if someone cancels in May, maybe this artist who just had a show that closed would be free. Keeping those like emergency plans in mind so that, if we have an empty slot, it's not great for the venue because we have a certain amount of overhead we have to make every week that's divided up per performance. So, yeah, just like not having an empty slot is a definite challenge.
Okay. So now if a beauty wanted to perform at 54 Below, how can they get into that?
A great question. I love having this kind of like open inbox policy where anyone who wants to can pitch a show to the venue. And what's great is that a lot of times, someone who's just starting out can do an 11:30 show. It's like a good spot for someone who's starting out. And again, like more emerging artists do 9:30 and like older established people do the 7, but there's a spot for everybody. So no matter who you are, like what your age is or anything like that, you can pitch a show and we'll give you all the information and like help you learn what that means. And the best thing to do is to email booking@54below.com. And even if you just say like, hey, I want to do a show there, send me more information, we'll send you more information at that email address.
Okay, nice. So on Broadway, you had the opportunity to work on shows by directing, producing, and marketing the show. What field did you enjoy doing more?
That's a great question. You have so many great questions. I keep saying that, but I'm like, you're just such a prepared interviewer. The interesting thing about working as an assistant director is that I know that I am not necessarily, I don't really want to be a director, but I loved being an assistant director.
Okay.
And that made me think a lot about like producing, because so much of producing is making sure everyone on the team has everything they need to be successful. And that also has a lot in common with what people's associates and assistants do. So definitely being an assistant director was a valuable experience, and I loved it when I was, doing that. But really producing is, where my heart is. And also the same thing with like working on a show from a marketing perspective. Like a producer is guiding the ship. So they're guiding the marketing, they're guiding all the creative team, to do their best decisions. And so, everything I've done has kind of led to like this producing thing. That said, it's not my like career goal to direct, but I actually am directing something right now, which is really cool. And never say never. And there's specific things that could be right for you along the way. And there's this show I've been working on for literally years called the Jonathan Larson Project. And it's going to be at 54 Below for 12 shows in October. Nice. And it's essentially this project that celebrates the unheard work of Jonathan Larson, writer of Rent and Tick, Tick, Boom. And I've spent a long time researching at the Library of Congress and the New York Public Library all of his songs that we haven't heard, that are from projects we don't know. It's incredible. It's been like the most inspiring experience. And when I was putting together that show and thinking about who was going to work on it, I thought, you know what, I'm going to direct this because I feel like I'm the one to direct this. And that's been really cool so far. We actually had a big meeting about it yesterday, and I was like, this is so exciting. And nice. I'm meant to direct this stage of this project.
Yeah, especially if you're so passionate about it. You did years of research, so...
Totally.
So what would you say was the most challenging out of those three?
You know what? Every project has its own challenges, and every job has its own challenges. I think as far as Broadway shows I worked on, I worked on a show called The Performers, which closed very quickly on Broadway, and I was part of the marketing team for that. And what's really crazy about Broadway is really some shows are just so dependent on reviews to decide whether they run or not. And certainly, I'm obsessed with learning about shows that had short runs for whatever reason, but that had something to appreciate about them. And working on marketing a show where, the reviews are not good and that's all happening, is such an interesting thing, because certainly shows have been turned around that didn't get great reviews, and certainly many also have not. So that was a huge challenge, and I learned a lot about just like what kinds of decisions need to be made when something like that is happening, which was valuable. Okay.
So what is your favorite Broadway show?
My favorite Broadway show of all time is a musical called Merrily We Roll Along, which is just like, it's always been my favorite musical, and an amazing documentary about the original cast came out recently, and you should check it out. It's directed by Lonnie Price. Go Google and watch that documentary. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. But that show really changed my life and showed me what musicals could be. It's my favorite. What's your favorite show?
My favorite show. I love Chicago.
Chicago's great.
Miss Saigon was really, really good.
Cool. I also love Miss Saigon.
Yeah, Miss Saigon was really good. I would say Chicago is my favorite.
Cool.
Probably. Yeah. So if you could go back to your college self and give them, a little bit of advice, what would you tell them?
I did a lot of different things in college to teach myself what I wanted to learn, but I didn't do a great job of doing the thing we were just talking about being like, I never costume designed a show, there were certain things I didn't do. I really wish I'd learned how to operate a light board. And at the time, I was, I think for a lot of us who are overachievers and type A, you think, okay, well, I'm not going to be good at this, so I shouldn't do it. And I wish that I'd had the opportunity or given myself the opportunity in college to say, hey, I'm going to learn how to operate a light board or similar things to that. I'm not going to be great at it. I might never be great at it, but I just want to have that experience. So when I'm talking to a light board op, I have better knowledge. I wish I'd done a little bit more of that in college. And I think that, giving students the permission to not be great at something, but learn about it is super important.
Yeah. So why do you think theater is important?
Theater is freaking magical. I think that the fact that, like, in this world we live in, no matter what technology becomes, no matter what's happening, people gather in a room and tell each other stories face to face, using different mediums mixed together, whether it's like music and dance and, you know, acting and like lighting and all of these like elements that come together anytime you're seeing a show. It's extraordinary and there's nothing like it. And anytime I'm in a theater, whether it's a show I love or a show I'm not so crazy about, I'm just so moved by the fact that all these people, like people you see and people you don't see, have done all of this work so that like you can have this live experience that you can never have again. That's only going to exist in like your memory. It's just so unique and so special. And I love theater so much, and I love seeing it and making it and all the things.
Right, I agree with that. 100% agree with that. Like, when I go see Broadway shows, I'm always like, wow, like you feel like you're in your own world, like, just watching this whole story. Like, it's a really, like, wonderful experience. So, like, theater is just, it's great.
Totally.
So, can you give some last advice for beauties who may want to be in the career that you are in right now?
I think that the best advice is to really just do whatever you're interested in. And, you know, if you're interested in writing a show, then, like, write a show and, like, put it on in your basement for, like, 10 of your friends. And I think that that always leads to the next thing and the next thing, even if it just gives you the experience that you need to do that on a, you know, bigger level the next time. Or you'll end up, you know, starting a basement theater company for your friends. It's just getting started, and it's just, you know, no matter what the thing you want to do is, there's a way to be doing it now. You know, going to like a local theater and seeing if they need help assisting with whatever you're interested in, or writing a letter to someone who you like want to work with someday and seeing if they might need an assistant. Like, there's just a lot of ways to be proactive and kind of just like getting started doing the thing. So I would just say, like, don't wait and like find a way to start, no matter what that means to you, even if what that means is like reading books about stage management because you want to be a stage manager. Just like make sure that you're doing something and that it's like coming from you.
So start now.
Start now.
So thank you so much for chatting with me. I feel like I learned so much about theater and your passion for theater.
Thank you so much for having me.
But before you go, I do have a little gift for you.
Oh, cute.
You can open it.
Oh my god, this is so nice. So nice. And I also really like the bag it came in.
Thank you.
Everything is just so stylish. Oh my god, this is so awesome.
It's a Girls with Beauty and Brains shirt.
I love it.
You can snap your picture in it.
I'm going to do that. So I love this shirt.
Thank you. Thank you. I also have one. I should have worn it.
Beautiful.
Could have twinned. So remember, beauties, that Jennifer Tepper is a girl with beauty and brains, and so are you. Bye!